Thank you, Shirley, for that introduction. You're very generous. And thank you to P&O Marinas and to the organization, ICOMIA and LMA for putting together this great conference. It's wonderful to see everybody in person in the same place. So, to start off with, I'm kind of going to go back to the beginning. And you're going to say, this isn't the beginning of the world. It's the beginning of the world we live in now. So at the end of 2019, we were hearing about this virus in China, and we were hearing that people are going to get very sick, but we still didn't understand how it affected us. February 24th, 2020, we were scrambling at the shipyard because Italy was about to go into lockdown. And for us, that meant that we had parts sitting with a supplier that we couldn't reach. And we had a yacht in Via Reggio there for service that was trying to get out. And we worked all weekend with the suppliers, with the logistics companies, with the captain of the yacht to try to get everything organized and to get it out before lockdown. And we still didn't understand what is going on and what the effect was going to be on the world. This is what the world looked like on February 25th. China was, as you can see, all red, and the rest of the world was picking up. The spread of the virus taught us that we had to pivot. That weekend scramble became a normal thing. Every week, regulations were changing, situations were changing, people were shutting down, people were getting sick. We learned that we had to rely on virtual communication, and we learned that we had to rely on each other in a way that we had never done before. The funny thing is, we got a phone call saying that Dubai Boat Show was about to be canceled. And how did we feel about it? We had a conversation and we agreed, and the show was canceled. What we discovered is a lot of people still had their tickets, so they came anyway. And then we had a little boat show at Gulfcraft, and it was the busiest time of year for us. We saw suppliers, we saw designers, we saw clients, and everybody was talking about what's going to happen. And what we discovered is that the world is an incredibly small place. I had a conversation with Mike. Is Mike here? Mike there? There you are, Mike. So I had a conversation with Mike in about March or April of that year of 2020. And Mike said to me, well, you know, everybody is saying that the banks are in a very good position. So it's not going to be like the financial crisis. We're going to be fine. And I said to him, Mike, the airlines were not grounded during the financial crisis. This is not a situation of the economy is going to be fine. We're talking about the Great Depression here. We're talking about something completely different. And that is actually what happened. So the world had to pivot, and we discovered something. I found this somewhere. We are not as unique as we think we are. This is the president of WISTA, Women in Shipping and Trade, right? She's right. We think of ourselves almost as God's special children, us boaters, right? I'm a little off-center here. I'm not from the marina world, I'm from the boat building world. And we discovered that actually we rely on each other, and we actually ended up using the same softwares as everybody else. We think of ourselves as very tactile. Boats are very tactile. But we discovered that we can actually work virtually. We can commission boats virtually. We can actually take this really negative situation and pivot, and now increase mind share, because we are no longer waiting for clients to come out to the marinas or to come to the boat shows. We are in their homes, we are in their computers, and we are showing them bits and pieces of the boating world that maybe they didn't see before, because we're filming it in more detail, and we're communicating on a much more intimate level than we would have before. And we discovered something else. People really wanted to find safe havens, and boats are safe havens. Actually, interestingly, Shirley was saying that we continued production and we launched 2 boats. We also did 2 virtual handovers, virtual commissioning and virtual handovers of 2 super yachts that were shipped to Europe in July of 2020, if you can imagine that. So we learned how to be agile. So what is the ecosystem? Now I'm going to go out of whatever the ecosystem of the marina and look at the ecosystem of the industry. And what does that mean? That means everything from suppliers to logistics to manufacturers to logistics again to marinas to regulators. It's all one economic system. And there's a big difference when we work together versus when we work solo. So for example, when we're working with a supplier who is researching and coming up with new innovation, it really makes a difference in moving forward. We've been able at Silvercraft to work with suppliers who are creating better solar panels and that function better and that provide us with quiet, very silent, and a very comfortable ride for our clients. And specifically in the Middle East where you need the AC running all the time, it's great to be sitting there and not have to hear the sound of the generator. You guys can imagine, talking about noise pollution, you can imagine how uncomfortable that is. So when we work together with suppliers, we could really benefit from it. But we need to move forwards and also say, okay, now that we can generate this type of energy and we can work with suppliers to create more and more solutions, how can we take that and then maybe get into the grid and provide that energy for the grid? But one thing we discovered is that that chain of the ecosystem is very vulnerable. When the logistics broke down, and I think we're still seeing some of that today, it really affected all of us across the world. So in our world, we're more focused on clients, right? We're forward-facing. I think everyone that's sitting in this room will see a photo like this, the luxury of yachts. And you'll immediately start thinking of, for us anyway as boat builders, all of the little things that require integration in this photo, right? The sound system, the light system, the ACs, the curtains. Now, more and more these boats are getting difficult. That's not a good word, not difficult. Let's say complicated, right? People want to get on the boat and they want to be comfortable and they want to be not bothered by anything, right? This is the world of luxury. And for us, that means that the software needs to be really well integrated. And the more we can use things like AI, learning software, we can do digital twinning in the manufacturing, and the more we can start using the Internet of Things and have a more connected world, the more comfortable and the more luxurious these yachts are. So for us, when we're looking at software integration, when we're looking at sustainability, when we're looking at technology, we're looking at it from a perspective of making the ride as luxurious and as comfortable as possible for the client. The client doesn't have to feel a thing. What we discovered, though, is that the clients are really looking for something else, and they're looking for this, the return to community, right? That's what happened when we went into the virtual world. People lost contact. They were in contact more and less at the same time because they didn't have that physical interaction. I think earlier on the first day of the conference, we were talking about how great the sales were and business is booming in the boating industry. And that's because boats were a safe haven. People can go buy a boat and go out into the sea and feel safe and feel comfortable. And that's what clients are looking for. So what do we need to do to facilitate that, to make things easier? In the UAE, what we've done is look at sailing permits, registration, insurance, berthing, to facilitate those things, to make it easier for a client to go out. And at the marinas, and here I have to bring up P&O and Port Rashid in particular, they've done a really great job in trying to bring everything and streamline the processes. And that's central to how a marina should operate, I think. So now in the UAE, you can actually text on WhatsApp to get your sailing permits, which is really helpful to people. And there are online systems that help you get all of your permits and all of your work done. But there's still a barrier to entry, of course, if you want to own a boat. The regulations are still difficult for some people to navigate. And I think Cedric earlier was saying that people over less than 50 are not buying boats. And that's something I wanted to bring up, and maybe we can have a discussion about it. It's still a foreign thing and it's still a difficult thing, but it's also becoming more and more expensive. And I think if we work together to try to see where we can reduce costs and where we can make things easier for clients, you will get more growth in that younger generation. Some of you may have seen this map, others not. So this is basically the marine leisure map of Dubai. Dubai is trying to make boating more accessible to people, trying to create places where you can anchor, where you can use water sports, trying to connect the marinas with bridges. And why is this important? It's important because, as we were talking about growing revenue, this is one of the ways that you grow revenue. You create the boating environment. Now, in Europe, this is very, very well, shall we say, progressed. In the UAE, that boating culture is still a little bit behind, as well as the rest of the GCC. But this is what captains want to see. This is what boat owners want to see. They want to see more accessibility. They want to see more places where they can go out. And this is what would help you also increase tourism. It brings tourists into the economy, shall we say, through the boating world. This is 2020, if you could imagine. January to December 2020, this is the international tourists that came into the UAE. We had a total of 5.51 million international guests during lockdown. Many of them came from Western Europe and South Asia. If you can imagine a small percentage of those having access to boating, right now there's virtually no access. If you can imagine those people having access to boating, you can see what potential for growth there is from tourism within the boating culture. And then that's where you get increased footfall in the marinas, and that's where you grow charter companies, increase activities. Right now we have new cruise terminals in the UAE, and that's something that's only recently started to happen. Port Zayed, Port Rashid, and Dubai Harbor all have cruise terminals, and that we're expecting to see increased revenue from there. So all of this is that I'm talking about is mostly focused on communication, virtual accessibility, easing of regulations. But I came across this and I thought, well, what about the technology aspect of it, right? Firstly, is this true? The super yacht industry is the Formula One of the shipping industry, where many of the latest technologies are trialed. I saw this in Super Yacht Innovation Report, and I thought, is that true? Are we the innovators? Sometimes. But what are we doing? What are we doing to further or use that innovation to increase sustainability, to make mobility more eco-friendly? Are we doing our part? Could we be doing more? So right now on the manufacturers end, what we're looking at is new technology in build material. We're looking at a new technology when it comes to digital twinning and using AI. But we're not really looking towards the marinas to say, what can you do working with us to create a more sustainable future? That part of the bridge hasn't been built yet. And I think that's where we can take the conversation further. And I think there are many speakers today and within the last 2 days that have ideas that are really great. For us, it's always looking at technology to make our user experience more comfortable. But I think looking broader, we also have to look at technology that will make our world a better place to live in. So we do a lot of solar power, but as Ina was saying earlier, there's all sorts of power to be had from waves, right? And I'm told we don't have enough waves in the UAE to actually create wave power. Well, maybe Ina can tell us a little bit more about whether or not we actually need those high waves to create power. I think there is a lot of power that still could be had from wave technology. And I wonder what boats can do to help that. Should we be looking at making boats that can harness in some way? I mean, fins. Can fins be used in the same way that the floaters are used when we're out at sea? Is that a possibility? Has anybody looked at it? I've never heard. So I think that would be interesting. And I think that boat builders definitely want to look at technologies that can help us put energy back into the grid. But we need to be working hand in hand with marinas to do that. So Holly asked, What is your piece of the puzzle? And as a boat builder, I'm telling you, this is our piece of the puzzle. Our piece of the puzzle is to create more variety in solutions for cleaner technology and cleaner energy. And our piece of the puzzle is to say, we need to work together towards that future. And, we welcome any suggestions with open arms. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abeer. Have we any questions from the floor? No, I mean, you have led us perfectly into the next session. And I guess, I have a question. Standing in front of you is the international marina community. And you talked about collaboration, taking the next step together. How do we make that happen? What would you like to see from the group of people that are sitting in front of you?
So I think I'm the only boat builder here. Am I right about that? Yeah, so I'm a little off-center. So I think there could be definitely conferences like this are great for the marina world to get into contact. And the ICOMIA is a very it's a great institution. Maybe ICOMIA and CBAS could do some collaboration together because many boat builders are members of CBAS, and I think we could have joint conferences. I know that CBAS, we have meetings all the time to discuss new technologies and IMO regulations that are coming through, and I think it would be helpful for ICOMIA, IMO, CBAS to all be working together and maybe put some parameters down what we would like to see happen.
There we go, that's the challenge. Ladies and gentlemen,